Hi boys and girls, this is Twisdale, and today I'm going to introduce you to Chapter 2. We're going to be working with fractions and decimals. There's the standard right there if you'd like to read it. And then our objective is I can convert between fractions and decimals. So we're going to talk about how you can go back and forth between a fraction and a decimal. Let's get started. So fractions and decimals, these are the small parts of a whole number. For example, these are the pennies between $2. So if I have $2.37, then my whole numbers, it's somewhere between $2 and $3. But I have more than $2, but I have less than $3. I have 37 cents. So it's 2 and 30 tenths and 7 hundredths. So it's the small parts of a whole number. So that's kind of what decimals are, okay? Alright, so all decimals can be written as a fraction, and all fractions can be written as a decimal. I want you to record this little chart that I'm going to fill out here in your notebook. So the fraction form is going to be on this side, and the decimal form is going to be on this side. So 1/4 as a fraction can also be written as 0.25. Okay, that's 1/4, and you need to remember this. It's important to know that 0.25 is also the same as 1/4. Some of you might know this one. 0.5 in fraction form is 1/2. Okay. 3/4, if you think of 3/4, is 0 and 75 hundredths. Okay, you need to know that one. And then this one, I want to show you, see how it's 2.5? Well, we already know from earlier that 0.5 is a half. So that 2 is the whole number, 2 and 1/2. Okay, so these are the same thing. These are all equal to each other. So it's really important that you recognize that every fraction has a decimal partner, and every decimal has a fraction partner. They're the same, they have the same value. So today we're going to be working on how to go back and forth if you're given a decimal, how to change it to a fraction. Or if you're given a fraction, how to change it to a decimal. Now, I saw this the other day on Facebook, and I just thought it was so funny, and it blew my mind. So you know this division sign? It says the division symbol is just a blank fraction. You replace the dots with the numbers. So when I write a division sign like this, it's like a fraction, like 3/4. And it's true because a fraction can be written as 3 divided by 4 equals. Okay, that's really what that line right there, it means divided by. If this line could talk, it would say divided. Well, I can't write that small. Divided by. So when you think of the division sign, just think, oh, it's a little fraction without any numbers yet. And then those fractions, once you put together those fractions, that line just says 3 divided by 4. And you got a picture of Will Smith. So I'm going to show you how to change a fraction to a decimal. So what you're going to do is you're going to divide the numerator by the denominator, just like I just told you. So 3/4 is the same as 3 divided by 4. Now in order to change this to a decimal, we know it's going to be smaller than 1. Okay? We know that because we know that 3/4 is not a whole. Smaller than 1. So I'm going to take 3 divided by 4 and I'm going to solve this. So I'm going to put it in my little division sign. And, oops, sorry. I did that backwards. Okay. Let me try again. So the first number goes inside the division sign, 3. And 4 goes on the outside. Okay. So 4 does not divide into 3, and we know that. So we need to put a 0, and we're going to place a decimal. Okay, does 4 go into 30? Yes, 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. And subtract. Okay, Now, might be new for you. I know that they taught you this in 5th grade, but maybe you forgot. When you have a remainder and there's a decimal in the answer, you add a 0 and bring it down. Okay, 4 goes into 20 5 times. No remainder, we're all done. Okay, so 3/4 is the same as 0. I'll do 0.75. And that's how you change a fraction into a decimal. Now remember, it needed to be smaller than 1. 0.75 is smaller than 1. Okay? If you have any questions, please So I want you to try this one. Remember that this little line right here says 5 divided by 8. Go ahead and convert this into a decimal. Okay, so let's check your work. So you did 5 divided by 8 equals a number smaller than 1. So we took 8 on the outside and put 5 on the inside. Well, 5 doesn't go into 8, or sorry, 8 doesn't go into 5, so we add a 0 and a decimal. Does 8 go into 50? Yes, it does. It goes in 6 times. And remember, I want to add another 0, because I can add as many zeros as I want after that decimal. This is 2. And when I add a 0 here, it gives me 40. 8 divided into 40 is 5. So 5/8 written as a decimal is 0 and 625 thousandths. Okay, so these are the same thing. It's just its partner. Alright, let me show you another example. Sometimes you will have a decimal or a fraction with a whole number. So what that means is this fraction or this whole number is just going to be in the ones place next to our decimal. So and now I just need to take 13 and divide it by 20. Oops. So we'll do 20. And that doesn't work. 0, 0. Decimal. 20 into 130. 6 times 120. Bring down a 0. 20 into 100 is 5. And that's 0. So now I take this number right here and I include it in my 4, and it's 4 65 hundredths. Okay, so I just, I kind of broke it apart and said, okay, my whole number, it's like my decimal went right here. Okay, and so my whole number stayed the same, and then I just converted the fraction into a decimal. Okay, so now we're going to go the other direction. So if I have a decimal and I want to change it to a fraction, I'm going to use place value. Now, I think this was easier than going fraction to decimal, but it is important that you know both. So remember our place value of decimals. So 0.1, that 1 is in the tenth, so that's 1/10. 0.01 is 1/100th, and 0.001 is 1,000th. So the way it's written as a fraction is 1/10 is written as 1 over 10. 1/100th is written as 1 over 100. 1,000th is written as 1 over 1,000. So if you can say the decimal correctly, you can write it as a fraction. So this number right here is 3/10. So now I just listen to what I'm saying and say 3/10. Oh, I can write that. 3/10. And there it is. Now you want to make sure it's in simplified form, which that one is. Now this one here, I have 27 hundredths because that last number is in the hundreds. So I write 27 hundredths. Make sure it's simplified, which that one is. And that's all you have to do. Okay? So remember, if you recognize where that last digit is, then you just put it over that tenths place. So let's try another one. Oh, I'm going to have you try this one. Go ahead and convert this one to a fraction. Alright, so for 47 or this is 0.47. This is 47 hundredths, so I just do 47 over 100. And that's all it is. And that one is simplified. So you're good. Okay, now sometimes you're going to need to simplify the fraction by removing the GCF from the numerator and the denominator. So for example, I have 1, which is going to be my whole number, and 25 100ths. So this is a mixed number. And with 1 and 25 100ths, I know that 25 and 100 share a GCF of 25 and 100 is 25. So I'm going to simplify this by dividing each of these by 25. So now I have 1 and 1/4. And that's all. Now some of you already said to yourself, well, Mrs. Twisdale, earlier you told us that 0.25 is 1/4. So I already knew that 1 and 25 hundredths was 1 1/4. And if you knew that, awesome. Way to use another strategy. I love it. Okay, so go ahead and convert this one to a fraction. So this is written as 5/10, right? Because it's 5 in the tenths place. And we can divide each of these by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. And so this written as a fraction is 1/2. But some of you said, I already know that 0.5 is 1/2. Because that's something that my brain already knows. And that's awesome if you already knew that. Okay, let me show you a fraction and decimal number line. So if I have a number line here, and this number line goes from 0 to 1, and these are all of the pieces that are broken down in it. So if you look halfway, we have 1/2 on the fraction side and 0.5 on the decimal side. So I can fill this in by going like this on the decimal. The decimal is a little bit easier for me. I'm going to do 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, oh, 0.5 is already there, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, and then 1.0. Now it's one whole. Okay. You might have noticed a couple of patterns in there. Now each of these places also has a decimal or a fraction that goes with it. So let's see here. So I can write this fraction here as 1/10. And this one would be 2/10, but we could simplify that to 1/5. This one would be 3/10. This one would be 4/10, also known as 2/5. Okay, 1/2 or 5/10 would also fit here. 6/10, which can also be written as 3/5. 7/10, 8/10, also known as 4/5, and 9/10, and 10/10, or 1 whole. Okay, so if you look at these, and sorry, it's a little bit sloppy, I'm kind of running out of room here. All of these match up. These are all equivalent. They're the same value. So it's important to recognize that these are the same thing. Okay, that's when we talk about equivalent fractions or equivalent decimals. All of these have their own spot on the number line, and nothing can change that. Okay. Alright, and I do want you to pause your video here and copy that number line into your note. Okay, the last one I have for you is to do this story problem. I'll read it for you. After a storm, Michael measures 6 7/8 inches of snow. What is this amount as a decimal? Alright, I'm going to go ahead and solve this now. So I want to take 6 7/8, and I want to write it as a decimal. I'm going to keep my whole number the same. So I'm going to have 6 point, and then I'm going to look for what I'm going to write as my decimal. Now I remember that 7/8 is 7 divided by 8. So I'm going to put 7 on the on the inside, 8 on the outside. 8 goes into 70 8 times, actually, 64. And that's going to give me 6. Add another 0 and bring down a 0. That's 7 times. Oops, sorry, 56. And that's going to give me 4. Bring down a 0. Oh, I love that. That means 8 goes into 45 times. And that's done. So now I take this number right here, just what's after the decimal, and place it into my answer. So I have 6 and 875 thousandths. And that would be inches of snow. All right, that's today's lesson. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask and raise your hand, and then we'll talk about it in whole group as well. Thank you so much. Have a great day of learning.